And I'd ask that you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. And for this, we have a Scout Troop 20, you have to tell me, Pack 24. So I'm sorry that we didn't, I apologize to everyone, remain standing. We had some important business to take care of in executive session. We don't like to keep our community waiting, particularly on such a important night. We want to make sure Chief-elect Dufort was ready for this. But now, if the pack would come right up here and stand here, we're going to have the honor guard come up and present colors. So if you'll just stand over to the side over here. And I'll bring you to the center in a minute. And with that, I will ask the honor guard to present. Stay right there. That's good. Great.
Center. Face. Prepare to post. Ready? Post. Read. Cover. Ready? Face. Present. Out.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Left. Face. Forward. Arm.
Thanks, guys. All right, thank you to the honor guard and to Pack 24. Dismissed.
Nice.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the oath of office. I'll ask for a motion to approve of the city manager's appointment of Richard Dufort as our next fire chief. Alderman Brennan with a motion, Alderman Hill with a second. We don't need a roll call on this, do we?
No, Mayor.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, we're a little confusion tonight. We're going to put that back on hold. We need to do roll call first.
Bastido.
Here.
Nardini.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
Irby.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Varimus.
Here.
Hill.
Here.
Schenko.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Bram.
Here.
Cahill.
Here.
Toledo.
Here.
Park.
Here.
Nudera.
Here.
14 present, 0 absent.
14 present, 0 absent. We have a quorum. Now, on to item 3, oath of office. May I have a motion to approve the city manager's appointment of Richard Dufort as our next fire chief?
I proudly motion, Mayor.
Yeah, and a second by Alderman Hill. Now, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, good to practice that. All right, so I'll join you over at the podium there. We have a remote mic. Why don't we come up to the front here instead? All right, Chief Olmos, do you have I'd like to invite your family up here to stand with you as you take the oath.
The more the merrier. Yeah, all of us.
Come on, plenty of room, shift over, you can stay here. All right.
I have a job here.
I know, that's why you gotta stay. It's not a paid job. All right. And would you like to tell us who you have with us this night?
This is my wife, Linda, my oldest son, Rick, my daughter, Kelly, my youngest son, Matthew, my nephews, John and Danny Doherty, my mother, of course, Chris Dufort, my sister, Denise, my brother, Chris, my brother-in-law, John, his daughter, Maura, and my brother, Chris's wife, Kelly.
That's all right. All right, so Chief Dufort has more than 30 years of firefighting experience with the city of Elmhurst. He's an Elmhurst resident and a graduate of York High School, homegrown here in town. Completed his Associate Applied Science and Fire Science from the College of DuPage and a lot of continuing education, including the Science Management Program at Southern Illinois University. He joined the fire department in 1993. He started as a firefighter. He was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and then he was promoted to battalion chief in 2017. And we asked him to serve as our interim chief beginning in April of this year, and he's done an outstanding job already. I will say, Chief Dufort will enjoy the confidence of all the council. This is something that the council participates in to decide who our police chief or fire chief will be. And Chief Dufort is very well liked and very well respected by not only the community, but its representatives, the city council. And I will say I've known Dick Dufort for many years. As I look around the room and I see his family members, many of whom I know and see around the community, it's proud to have someone with so much family and such deep roots from the city of Elmhurst to lead our fire department into the future. And we're very fortunate to have you and your experience, and we look forward to working with you. Without further ado, are you ready?
Sir.
I, Richard Dufort,
I, Richard Dufort,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States,
that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the chartered laws
and the chartered laws
of the city of Elmhurst,
of the city of Elmhurst.
and that I will discharge the duties
I'll discharge the duties
of fire chief
of fire chief
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, Chief.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to ask the family to come around here. I want to take a picture with, I'll be in the first one, and then just the family. All of you come up here. Yeah, join around. Some on this side over here. You're right here. All right, there you go. Hide behind the flag. All right. We'll go back in. And I'd like to dismiss the family and ask the firefighters to to come on up and take a picture with the new chief. Long time no see. I haven't seen you for a while. I'm going to stand on the edge so you guys move in.
Oh, I don't want to be in this.
All set. All right. Thank you. Now I'm gonna have them walk around and shake hands with the council and we'll dismiss them.
A rare sight. Thank you.
And lastly, I know the council members would like to each personally congratulate you, so watch your step and start over here on your left.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Chief. Congratulations, Chief. You keep forgetting yourself? Oh, okay. So not as well.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Nice to see you. Congrats.
I'm going to ask the honor guard to remove the flags from the center. We're going to go on to the rest of the business of the city council, so we'll pause for a couple minutes. If you are here just for the ceremonial portion, feel free to take leave now. You're, of course, welcome to stay for the entire exciting city council meeting.
Man, you could spot a doofus a mile away. The brother and the son look exactly like that.
Now it's gonna stay.
I'm
It's tomorrow.
gender deaf to that, but of course you're right. Of course you're right.
Well, it seems like my oldest is teaching this but she also if you try to get to something, she's doing her way.
Wow.
First grade, is it okay?
No, I don't. That's awesome.
It's okay. We'll work our way
Do they do reach already in first grade?
My daughter was in it for math.
A lot of paint. A lot of paint. We made a little mess.
Oh, they're joining the troop?
They're already
Really?
So
you moving to that one?
not like it does in the church
I know the leader.
of Rome.
and we only got to get now.
Computational. That's awesome.
They're working a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Long way from Texas.
Like a puzzle for him. Trying to think of anything.
I took some notes.
My daughter's the same age as your daughter.
Maybe I'll just put an email.
And reason I said
But we do. Do they know we have a certificate?
All right, we're going to get back to the business of the city council. Item 4 on the agenda is receipt of written communications from the public. Is there anyone in the public that has a written communication that they would like to deliver to the council? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to public forum. Clerk Tamer, is there anyone who is signed in for public forum that would like to address the city council this evening?
Yes, Mayor. We have Dr. John Shevitz.
All right, Dr. Jevis, if you would approach the rear microphone, and I'll remind anyone speaking of public comment that we allot 3 minutes for your public comment so that we can get about the business of the council. I also would say please state your name. Address is optional. That just helps us follow up with you. Dr. Jevis, proceed.
I don't know if any of you guys were around in 1982. That's why I brought this up for Chief Dufort, and he's out there. In 82, Joe Newton, if you remember Coach Newton, is the winningest cross-country coach of all time. A young kid comes in there and he says, Coach, how do I be great like you? This was Coach Newton's response. Surround yourself with great people, and you will have the opportunity to become great like you. So the kid says, what's it mean to be a great person? And he said, someone that has character, like you guys. He said, what's the definition of character? He said, it's doing the right thing when no one's watching. So, in honor of everyone here in Character Counts in Elmhurst, you guys might have seen the other day, not only was Mayor Scott Levin cleaning Route 83, Butterfield Road, we were painting a Ray Graham house of special needs. Adults live there. Cleaned it in multiple areas with Elmhurst University football, basketball, wrestling, etc. teams. And it was interesting. The mayor spoke, but so did the old mayor, Pete DeCiani. And they brought up one thing. Coach Newton said, if you want to be great, surround yourself with great people. And this is a quote that Coach Newton told me in 1982. He said, Jevitz, if you decide to move to Elmhurst and live here, I will guarantee you Elmhurst will be the #1 community in the state. I'll guarantee you Elmhurst will have the #1 police, fire, library, hospital, and administration and mayor in this state. Now that was 1982. What were we ranked? Mayor Levin, are we still #1?
I'd say we're always #1, but yes, of course.
And then I'm going to challenge you, not only #1 in the state in the future, but #1 in the country. God bless you all. You all have T-shirts. We want to say and make you all tonight honorary members of Character Counts because nobody has greater character than you guys, our chief of police, our fire, and our town, and basically the citizens of this town. God bless Elmhurst.
Thank you, Dr. Jevitz. Clerk Tamer, is anyone else signed up to speak this evening?
Yes, Mayor. We have Sherry Smith.
Sherry Smith, thank you. If you would step over to the same microphone, state your name, address is optional, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Cherry Smith, and I'm here to talk about a vacation request that we've made with the city on Myrtle, between Myrtle and Walnut. So I just want to thank the previous committee for discussing and allowing us to have this vacation request. But there was a little bit of debate of, we've been kind of going back and forth on what this land should cost. So kind of rewind to the beginning. So our request initially was, we're looking at building a home on our current lot in Elmhurst. And with our plans, our lot is very limited. And what we would like to do was put a roof over this patio, but we didn't have the buildable square footage in order to do that. So it came across, we talked to the city, and the city's like, you know what, you may want to look at having the alley vacated. So this will give us 7 by 50 to add to our lot. And the strip of land that we're requesting, you cannot build on it. It's an easement. The utilities are on there. So we asked the committee to consider selling us or vacating this little strip of land so we can put a covered roof on the patio for this house that we would like to build. So we've met with the committee on 4 different instances. We've been kind of going back and forth looking at, okay, well, we'll agree, which we are greatly, appreciate them to allow us to vacate the land. And the disagreement was, well, they weren't quite sure on what this land would cost. Now, one of the meetings that we had met, we were under the impression the committee decided it would be 50% of the EAV, which is kind of the starting point per the documentation provided by staff of how to evaluate what this piece of land would cost. So we came to, I thought it was an agreement. The meeting after that, staff wrote up all this documentation, said, okay, here's the documentation, without our knowledge, or wasn't aware of the quiet process. Excuse me. The committee agreed to decided to increase that amount from 50% EAV to 75% EAV. So the meeting thereafter, I'm like, I'm not sure what happened. Staff's like, I don't know. You might want to, see what we can do. Staff pulled up some data. The data provided showed that the average cost per land in the city of Elmhurst was between 0 to 50% EAV. We then discussed it with the committee again, and they held on the 75% EAV, in which we weren't sure where the figures came from, if the data showed between 0 to 50, and they came to the conclusion at 75. So we wanted to ask the council to reconsider and re-looking at this evaluation made by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Clerk Tamer, are there additional?
We have Jim Hodap.
Mr. Hodap?
Greetings. I did come here to talk about Prairie.
Mr. Hodap, just because there's so much noise, I'm going to ask you to come as close to the microphone as possible.
Close as possible.
Thank you.
I don't know much about mics. I usually rap on the street. My name's Hodap, and I'm the god of rap, and I won't take it back. But before I go, I want to talk about the Prairie and my yard and stuff are under negotiation, so I'll just let that be. And I appreciate the aldermen, alderwomen who have responded to my many texts. And one of them was Alderman Rex. And he asked me to have a rap about electric cars. He owns an electric car since I think 2017. And the use of electric cars are going up, and that's good. I'm focused on trying to save the ecosystem, the Prairie ecosystem. I've been doing that for 40 years. But we have to each do our part, and one of the parts is electric cars. And I started thinking about, I felt like a sinner, because I don't have an electric car. But then I thought, well, wait, 1958, when I was in 8th grade, I used to catch the Roaring Elgin electric train from Wolf Road, because I lived a half a block in the prairie on Wolf Road, and we would ride to Glen Ellen, and I would caddy. And I remember the worst day in my life was when we got to the caddy in 1958, or around that time, and we went to go home. There was some guy on a freight thing, and he said, the Roaring Elgin is closed. And I remember in 8th grade thinking, this is the worst day of my life. Well, I wish every child in the world, when they're 8th grade, could say the worst day of their life was when the electric train, Roaring Elgin, stopped, because I definitely had a blessed life and didn't realize it. But anyway, it turned into the bike path and saved the Great Western Prairie. And so the worst thing in 8th grade turned out to be the best thing. And I'd like to thank Alderman Rex for doing something that's even more important, is global warming. Every day, it's just tragic what we see. So I think we should all get on that. And I guess my one claim to fame is at 55, I decided I would teach myself to rap in honor of my former students. I was a BD self-contained teacher for about 5 years, and they were the ones getting killed. And I said, in their honor, I teach myself to rap. But the way I did it was, even the 10 years I took care of my mother and 14 years since, I would drive to Oak Park, get on the Green Line, and rap to everybody that got on this train, and go all the way to 63rd Street, get off, walk through Marquette Park, not through Marquette Park, Washington Park, Jackson Park, and rap to everybody. And I've been doing it for 25 years. So before I go, I'll lay down a flow, just tic-tac off the top of the brain. I'll show you I rap better than Lil Wayne. He ain't got no game. I'm Master P, and everyone can see that's me. Now, everybody knows P stands for Prairie, but I'm old and I'm hairy, but I'm the best of all the rest. I'm the MC rapper that passed the Green Grasslands test. And yes, I must confess, my destiny has finally manifest. I'm still a prairie fool. You ain't heard the news. I wouldn't have no limit nature nut, but I made the move, and I won't stop now, Mayor. I can't stop. You can't stop me. So aldermen and code inspectors, don't try. We chew dragonfly. We don't die. Na-na-na-na. Na-na-na-na. Did I make you say, fight the power, and save a wildflower. Bye.
Yo. All right. Clerk Tamer?
That's it, Mayor.
That's it. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to give public comment but did not have the opportunity to sign in prior to the meeting? If so, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to announcements. Are there any announcements from the dais?
Oh, no, you're fine.
Alderman Schenko.
Yes, I just wanted to announce that the Second Ward will be having their town hall on September 27th at 6 o'clock at 395 West Lake Street. And we will be recording it and then posting the recording after the meeting.
Thank you very much. Other announcements? Alderman Irby.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On Saturday, September 30th, 10 o'clock to 3 p.m., 5 Elmhurst homes will be featured on the 2023 Illinois Solar Tour. It's a free solar tour that's hosted by the Illinois Solar Education Association, and the Elmhurst portion of the tour is co-hosted by the Elmhurst Cool Cities Coalition. The tour is both in person and virtual, allows for the public to view real-life examples of local homeowners who have transitioned to solar to cut their utility bills and reduce their carbon footprint. To register for the tour, visit the illinoissolar.org, and the Elmhurst Bicycle Club will be transiting with many people in a group between 3 of the homes, and you can sign up with them at elmhurstcoolcities.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Irby. Other announcements? All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. Clerk Tamer, if you will read the consent agenda, please.
7.1, executive session minutes of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council on September 5th, 2023. 7.2, minutes of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council on September 5th, 2023. 7.3, accounts payable, September 18th, 2023, $2,283,528.60. 7.4, reappointment of Kathy Jordan and Gail Anderson to the Senior Commission. 7.5, appointment of Michael Burke and to the Board of Trustees of the Police Pension Fund. 7.6, reappointment of Ralph Pacino, Chair, William R. Shanklin, to the Veterans Commission. 7.7, reappointment of Jerry Christopherson and David Novotny to the Veterans Commission. 7.8, appointment of Angela Ferrantino to the Veterans Commission. 7.9, appointment of Lori Tompos and William Gardner to the Veterans Commission. 7.10, referral, expanding Elmhurst trolley routes. Jacob Hill, 2nd Ward Alderman, Karen Schenko, 2nd Ward Alderwoman, Michael Bram, 3rd Ward Alderman, and James Nudera, 5th Ward Alderman. 7.11, report, case 23, P06, Yorkfield Presbyterian Church conditional use permit, 1099 South York Street. 7.12, report, referral, residential builder, sidewalk construction code. 7.13, report, computer replacement. 7.14, report, health savings account contribution. 7.15, report, alley vacation request, Myrtle and Walnut. 7.16, report, Northeast Elmhurst sidewalk funding. 7.17, report, 2024 Ford Explorer police pursuit vehicles. 7.18, report, 2025 Ford Explorer police pursuit vehicles. 7.19, an ordinance amending section 44.120 entitled No Parking Zones Enumerated of Division 3 entitled Parking Restrictions of Article 7 entitled Stopping, Standing, and Parking of Chapter 44 entitled Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Elmhurst Municipal Code. 7.20, an ordinance amending sections 37.07 entitled Home Rule Municipal Retailer's Occupation Tax, and Section 37.08 entitled Home Rule Municipal Service Occupation Tax of Article 1 entitled Municipal Occupation Taxes of Chapter 37 entitled Municipal Occupation and Privilege Taxes of the Municipal Code of Ordinances of the City of Elmhurst, Illinois. And 7.21, a resolution to adopt the 2023 DuPage County Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan.
Thank you, Clerk Tamer. Is there any item on the consent agenda that any alderman would like to remove, either for further discussion or to vote against? Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. 7.15.
715.
She said 7.5 or 7.1?
Alderman
Thank you.
Toludo?
Thank you. 7.12.
712. Alderman Irby?
7.17, 7.18.
717, 718. All right. I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 7.12, 7.15, 7.17, and 7.18. Alderman Jensen with a motion, Alderman Bram with a second. Clerk Tamer, call the roll.
Bastido?
Aye.
Nardini?
Aye.
Brennan?
Aye.
Irby?
Aye.
Deuter?
Aye.
Marimas?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Schenko?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Bram?
Aye.
Cahill?
Aye.
Toludo?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Nudera?
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. The consent agenda is approved minus items 7.12, 7.15, 7.17, and 7.18. I would like to move to item 7.12. Clerk Tamer, please read the report.
Therefore, the Development Planning and Zoning Committee recommends the City Council approve the requirement to pay a fee of $5,500 for any new home built on a lot that currently does not have a sidewalk, and the creation of a new sidewalk fund that would be used to build new sidewalk segments in areas that do not currently have a sidewalk. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for City Council approval. Signed, Alderman Marty Deuter, Chair, Alderman Jennifer Verimas, Vice Chair, and Alderman Tina Park.
All right, may I have a motion to put 7.12 before the council? Motion, Alderman Deuter. Second, Alderman Verimas. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. This report comes out of committee following a handful of meetings that began during the last council. 4, referring alderman asked whether the city should require the construction of sidewalk
as part of new home construction on sites without existing sidewalks. The recommendation of the committee is that a fee in lieu of sidewalk construction should be required. A sidewalk fund would be created to receive the fees, and the fund would be used to expand the city's sidewalk network. An investment in city sidewalks at the time of construction is fairly routine. Most of the sidewalks in Elmhurst neighborhoods were initially constructed when homes were built, in many cases generations ago. Currently, as homes are redeveloped, sidewalk sections that are damaged during construction are required to be replaced, and in many cases, the entire sidewalk on a site is replaced as part of the project. Also, our current code requires the construction of a new sidewalk where one doesn't exist if the new home lot connects to an existing sidewalk network. Other communities have required sidewalks to be constructed as homes are built. When this requirement is established after a neighborhood is developed, the sidewalk segments often end up not connecting. These chunks of sidewalk have been referred to as concrete islands and sidewalks to nowhere and yield very little benefit to the community or to the homeowner. Our recommendation will ensure the sidewalk investment is used efficiently and provides benefit by creating a new connecting sidewalk. After reviewing the construction costs of a new sidewalk, the committee determined a fee in lieu of sidewalk construction of $5,500 would be appropriate. The fee is based on the low-end estimate of new sidewalk construction costs. There's a lot more detail in the report that I hope everyone has had a chance to review. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I hope to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Toledo, you pulled the report. Would you like to speak next?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you to the committee and for the work that they did and staff, as well as the folks who made the referral. I have respectfully 4 concerns tonight with this new policy, and I appreciate your patience in explaining my reasoning. First off, and probably my largest concern with this policy, is that this is a flat-out redistribution of one person's money to another person, determined by the government with little transparency. I do not believe that that is a reasonable thing to do. Because what this policy is saying is that one family who will pay $5,500 more for their home to not have a sidewalk built in front of their home, while another family will get to use that money to get a sidewalk in front of their home for free. The amount of mental gymnastics that you have to go through to square that policy as a good policy is numerous. Some of you might argue that taxes in general do the same thing. You would be right in that taxes pay for things that everyone gets equally and of use to everyone in this community. Police, fire, streets. They clearly benefit all residents, and all residents pay. You could also argue that stormwater fees could be another analogy. My argument is that stormwater was a top priority for our entire community, going back in community surveys, at least back to 2012, ranking above 10% on the top 3 things that Elmhurst should address. Sidewalks do not appear anywhere above 1% if they're mentioned at all in any of those community surveys. My second concern with this policy is that this policy is a mere drop in the bucket of what it would cost to actually fix this problem, if you believe it to be a problem, in the city of Elmhurst. It would cost, by the committee's own numbers, $16.5 million to put in sidewalks in front of the 2,200 homes in Elmhurst that do not currently have them. At $55,000 a year, which this policy predicts will be collected, that would take 300 years to build those sidewalks. So why would we implement a policy that does not resolve what is deemed to be a problem? Fine. A third reason, this policy is currently silent on how or if the existing policy for new sidewalk installation would coordinate with this new policy of the fee in lieu of. So for example, we currently have a policy on our books where a neighborhood block can put out a petition, get 60% or more of people to agree to the sidewalks, and it's a 50-50 cost share. 50% that the homeowners pay is collected via an SSA. Would this policy pay the funds collected in the sidewalk fund? Would it go towards the 50% of the city, the 50% that the residents pay, or not at all? And if it not at all, then who are the sorry suckers that sign up to get the SSA to pay for their share? And these free funds that are being donated into this fund aren't even used for that. It is illogical and not addressed. My fourth argument against this policy: the policy is not transparent enough to the new home buyer, and it has the potential to cause unintended consequences. For example, the builder, who is not required in this policy to notify the buyer that there was a fee paid in lieu of, could increase the sales price. They're obviously going to pass it on to the buyer. They could increase the sales price by more than $5,500 and pocket the difference. Or the buyer may not be aware that the price of their home included a fee for the sidewalk that they don't get. I think at a minimum that transparency should be addressed in this policy. The other thing is that there is actually an unintended consequence for those folks who support more sidewalks being put in neighborhoods that don't have them currently. If the new buyer knows that their purchase price for their new home included a fee in lieu of, then in the future, when their neighborhood, which doesn't have a sidewalk, that's why the fee in lieu of was paid, in the future, if that block pursues the installation policy, they're going to be disincented to say yes to that because they've already paid $5,500 into a sidewalk fund that they may or may not get the benefit of if they approve the SSA funding for putting sidewalks on their block. So there's this unintended consequence potentially of disincenting people to use the existing program. For those 4 reasons, I do not plan to support this report. With that said, I do feel that the recommendation, if it passes, could be improved with a modification that would address my concern about transparency. And that is what leads me to make a motion to amend the report to include a sentence to the recommendation paragraph. You all have a copy of this in front of you. The addition would be that within the recommendation paragraph in red, we would add, this sidewalk fee shall be disclosed to the home buyer by the home builder in writing before or as part of the closing process. That, at a minimum, I believe, would at least add transparency to the parties involved in this so that everyone is very clear about what has happened as it relates to the property that they're building or buying. Thank you.
All right, Alderman Toludo has a motion. Is there a second? Alderman Kale with a second. Additional discussion now on the amendment. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. This is, the suggested change is not something that came up at committee. My initial reaction in hearing it, I have a few questions about how would this be enforced? How would that interfere with potential closings? If this is something that comes up at the closing. And just in general, it feels like an extra layer. And if I can make a comment just to the broader discussion, if I can.
Of course, yeah.
Just thinking about the policy, folks on the Public Works and Buildings Committee could probably talk about the last time the policy was used, but I think to look at this recommendation in the context of the policy that we had, the existing policy for sidewalks, which has been not used for quite a few years, I don't know that perhaps outdated policy should be what guides this approach.
And you're speaking on the overall report or the amendment?
I'm speaking on both,
Okay.
if I can.
So
yeah.
let's try to stay on the amendment, because then there'll be, I think, a larger debate on the overall. All right. Additional discussion on the amendment. Alderman Hill, then Alderman Bastido.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess one of my questions is, under the current process, if a builder develops a property that does not have a sidewalk in front of it, but yet is contiguous with other sidewalks, so they would be encouraged to, they'd be required, to finish that sidewalk. I don't believe we have anything that requires them to disclose that at the closing currently, so I'm not sure why we would do that now in this situation. I understand some of the logic behind that, but seeing that we already do complete sidewalks here, or ask home builders to complete sidewalks in some circumstances without requiring it being mentioned at closing, I don't see the need for it here. And also, I think this is an assumption that somehow the costs are directly passed on to the home buyer, which in this case, I think that is a big assumption. I mean, looking at the cost here, I just don't see a situation in which this is line item presented as a $5,500 increase in the cost of the property. So I see absolutely no necessity to support this amendment.
Alderman Bastido?
Yeah, I just have some confusion with what the amendment is mandating, because I think, and I haven't built a home in Elmhurst, but I think sometimes the person buys the land and then the house is built on it. Other times a builder builds a house and then sells it to a new home buyer. So does this cover both situations? And in what way would this be disclosed? And if it's in both situations, I think the definition of closing is a little different. So I think if I'm confused by it, I wonder if staff would be confused by it. So I don't know if anyone's able to answer those questions right now.
Do you want to respond to that, Alderman Toledo?
Sure.
Thank you. Go ahead.
As far as the amendment, I did pass it through our attorney, said that the amendment was legally sound and that staff would be able to, would be trusted to notify via the new policy, notify builders via the new policy.
Sorry, so the amendment says that the home builder would do the disclosing, but it sounds like actually it would be staff that would be disclosing this?
No. I think what Alderman Toledo was saying was that she asked staff and the city attorney to weigh in on the language used that would require the builder to give the notice.
I thought she just said that staff was disclosing that, or would be
No,
able to
no.
disclose it. Okay, so they're requiring the home builder to disclose it. And would cover both situations where the homeowner owns the land and is building it? Because in that case, I think the closing has already happened, right? But also the situation where the developer builds the house and then sells it?
Alderman Toledo?
Well, I'm not sure if I understand the question. I guess anytime that there's a fee in lieu applied via this policy, I would want the amendment, the intent of the amendment would be that a notification would be provided to the buyer from the person that paid the fee in lieu, so that there's transparency that a fee was paid and that the ultimate buyer understands that that happened and why.
Additional? No. All right.
May I respond to other comments, or do you want to get other questions first?
Let's see if there's other ones. Alderman Park?
Thank you, Mayor. I echo Alderman Hill's comments about I don't see this as a line item that is would be appropriate for any type of sale, with all that goes into buying a home and the situation of, I don't think we disclose, or buyers are not, builders are not set up to give, light items down to the criteria of the light switch or whatever, unless a homeowner is picking such things. But if it's something that is required by the city, that it is just something that is part of doing business. So I will not be supporting this amendment.
Alderman Brennan?
Thank you, Mayor. this is, for me, a sensitive topic from the standpoint of if I were buying a house in this area, new construction, even though it would be a sidewalk to nowhere, I would want a sidewalk. And so if I'm a buyer coming in and where's the sidewalk? At a minimum, I'd want to know that in the cost of this house is $5,500. The builder chose to forego building a sidewalk. From my perspective, again, I have kids. When they were young, they played on the sidewalk in front of the house. I sat out in the front yard with them. So even though in this particular case it may be odd that, oh, well, at the end of the sidewalk there's more grass and the other end of the sidewalk there's grass, it would eventually, hopefully, incent people to start connecting the pieces. So I do find value in the transparency of this, so I do support the amendment.
Alderman Udera.
I support the amendment. I think in any time you're in the purchase of buying a home, it's important that you're understanding exactly what you're purchasing. And I think that's just good policy.
Alderman Bram.
I respect Alderman Toledo's rationale behind this motion to amend. I definitely agree with the perspective of transparency, but I don't know if it's appropriate as I sit here and stew over this, because I walked in tonight and just saw this for the first time, that it's really the city's position to enforce or try to require such a thing. I think it's really the onus, which what the motion to amend does say, by the home builder, but how is the city enforcing that to make sure that the home builder is doing that? Or is this just a friendly request that the city says, Mr. or Mrs. Home Builder, you need to disclose this, unless it's always at the house closing. But this amendment gives the option before, as part of the closing, well, it says process. I'm just going to say that I don't support the amendment. I support the effort for pure transparency, but I think that onus should be 100% on the home builder.
Alderman Hill.
Just one more thought that occurred to me. I wonder if this sets a precedent for other things that we may require builders to do in the future, which will have to be disclosed as part of the closing, if such a case may ever come to pass. So I am a little worried about setting that precedent and saying, well, in the future, if we have other things that we require, what are we setting ourselves up for here in terms of closing disclosures that home builders have had to encompass or cover in order to build in Elmhurst? I'm not aware that we do that with anything else, so I'm not sure why this would. It's possible that we do, and maybe that's a question I have, but I don't know if I can get answered now.
All right, other discussion before I have Alderman Toledo respond to all of them? All right, Alderman Toledo.
I just would respond and stress, this should not be a debated motion for anyone that believes in transparency. If you believe in the policy and you think it's a right policy, you should have no concern with making sure that the buyer understands this new policy. And as related to a couple aldermen's comments about not disclosing when other builders build sidewalks, you don't have to disclose something that you can see with your eyes because there's a sidewalk in front of your home. You disclose here and you tell here because there's not a sidewalk that you can see, but yet you paid for one. That is very important for a buyer to understand that, and it is fundamental to the transparency and the support for this new policy. Thank you.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to offer that I think, we heard an earlier comment about What's the scenario where the person who is building is the existing buyer? We heard from homeowners tonight who own the parcel. They intend to rebuild on the parcel. There will be no closing. There will be no notification. We're talking about the folks who are involved in the decision. Many people in Elmhurst rebuild existing homes, just don't know that this has been thought through well enough to have my support.
All right, any additional discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I will ask Clerk Tamer. So we're voting on the amendment to 7.12 proposed by Alderman Toludo. Clerk Tamer.
Bastido.
No.
Nardini.
No.
Brennan.
Yes.
Irby.
Yes.
Deuter.
No.
Karimis. No. Hill.
No.
Schenko.
No.
Jensen.
No.
Bram.
No.
Cahill.
Yes.
Toludo.
Yes.
Park.
No.
Nudera.
Yes.
5 ayes, 9 nays.
5 ayes, 9 nays. The amendment fails. We're on to the motion itself. And now discussion on the motion to approve the report. Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. So, excuse me, as I read this report, I look at it and I really tried to rally behind it. I like innovation. I like creative ideas. But as I look at it, I just had a difficult time getting settled with it. For the very reasons I stated when we're discussing the amendment. I think a new construction should have a sidewalk, and this is actually enticing or encouraging a builder not to do that. And so if we're looking to fix a problem, I don't see why we would redirect $5,500, which quite honestly, I think it probably costs more than that, to do, a sidewalk in front of a house. Maybe not. I saw the analysis. There is a range. This policy is on the low end of that range. But so I struggle with the whole concept. But what I really struggle with is I don't understand how these funds will get redistributed and what the discipline, who's going to dictate that distribution. And until I understand that, I think there's some good ideas here, but until I understand how that's actually going to function, I won't be supporting the report tonight.
Alderman Hill and Alderman Bastido.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to say that I wholeheartedly support this report tonight. I want to address some comments that I've heard. I just want to mention, by the way, under the current SSA to build sidewalks on a block in Elmhurst, it has been 15 years since our last successful SSA. So perhaps some of the comments I've heard that maybe it would take 300 years to build sidewalks if we used the funds from Builder Sidewalks. It's going to take a lot longer than that under the current SSA program, which I consider essentially a broken program at the rate at which it's able to incentivize new sidewalks in Elmhurst. I also think there's a number of interlocking discussions that are related to sidewalks and referrals that have moved forward. I think that we have a traffic study that's already in its second phase of deployment here, and that's going to give us a lot of data about where sidewalks are needed. I'm not saying that's the way it's going to be used, but I think we're going to have a lot of data that will help us make decisions about how we prioritize sidewalk funds that we have, which is a problem I would love to have. How do we prioritize all these great sidewalk funds that we need to put to use? And of course, we also have safe routes to school, which seems to be self-evident of a place in which we need sidewalks, in which we can use those funds. So I personally, I understand that, it's not in this report, but I don't have any concern about where the sidewalk funds will be spent, and I think that's something that the council can come to agreement on and discuss, and probably is maybe a little outside the scope of this current report as I see it. But again, I fully support it as written. Thank you.
Alderman Bastido.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to say that I was one of the people on this original referral, and where this report ended up is not what I had pictured, but I will be supporting the report because I know that the committee, spent a lot of time discussing this. I think you came up with some creative ideas. I would have supported it if it was so-called, a sidewalk island, because I do think this is a step towards making Elmhurst a community that has sidewalks. So it's important for safety, it's important for community, for health, and I do support us moving in the right direction. So I appreciate all the work that went into this. I appreciate the process, even though it's not what I pictured. I will be supporting it. And, I do think the arguments against it, they don't really resonate with me because we did just approve a stormwater fee, and the stormwater projects were all targeted to very specific areas. Each project knew exactly how many houses and which houses would be affected by it. And my house was not any of those, but I am part of the community. I, will pay the stormwater fee, and I don't see it as a redistribution. And if it is a redistribution, it's not one that offends me because it's something that benefits our whole community. Just as sidewalks aren't for the person who lives in front of the sidewalk, they're really for the people walking by, the neighbors who are walking their dogs, the kids walking to school, anyone who just wants to get out of their house and walk. And so I do see sidewalks as a benefit to the whole community, will be used by the whole community, and equal use is not really a part of it, I think, when we talk about things like this. So thank you to the committee for the work you did on this, and I will be supporting it.
Any other discussion? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. This is tough for me. Alderman Tudeluto brought up a point that I did not think about, and that is in regards to the redistribution of funds and how that does interact with our current sidewalk policy. I don't know if that is possibly to be discussed or clarified in the forthcoming ordinance, but I think that is something that if it is not, and I did not see it in the report, if that's not clearly defined, that obviously needs to be clearly defined. With that said, I don't believe this is a redistribution of funds as well. Alderman Bastido just kind of took most of my comments away from me by preceding my comments, but I go back to the stormwater fund as well, or fees, especially myself representing the 3rd Ward, where the majority, I think the report said 50% or somewhere thereabouts, this impacts. That area of town, I would say 99% of that area of town, my ward, was not impacted by stormwater, but we're also a part of the solution. One town, right? One town working towards the same goals, and that's what I think is here. This is a public benefit. It may be more of a public benefit for the houses in the particular area that are impacted by this, but it is a public benefit. Some don't agree with this statement, but it's a safety concern and issue. I proposed this exact proposal probably 15 years ago, and I applaud the committee for thinking outside the box, because obviously at that time it did not move forward. But I think thinking outside the box and doing a fee in lieu of is appropriate to assist moving forward with it. My only concern is the redistribution of funds, and if it's not resolved in this upcoming ordinance, I'm sure it will be taken up by the committee in a future date to make sure that is clarified. So I wholeheartedly support this.
Last call for discussion. All right. Alderman Toledo.
Yeah, I will just offer a point of rebuttal to the argument against my argument about the stormwater thing, if you follow me. As stated when this Finance Committee presented the stormwater fee, the increase in the home rule sales tax at our last council meeting, which is actually was approved as an ordinance tonight, it was clear and the council agreed that stormwater did affect everybody in Elmhurst because we were getting a reputation as the city that floods. And it was affecting everyone's property value. That is the argument in support of everyone helping to pay to fix targeted areas within our community. We do not have a reputation as a city that doesn't have sidewalks. So they are not directly comparable. Thank you.
All right. Alderman Jensen.
Just one point, we do as a city have a policy of increasing our bike and ped network. We have a bike and ped plan. We have a new working group that's supportive of that. And to me, this is just an extension of that. The bike and ped plan, there's projects in various parts of the community that help more specifically that part, but they're for the community as a whole. This is for community as a whole. People that don't live in neighborhoods without sidewalks, bike to Churchville, they go to the park. You know, it's usable by everyone in town, and I think for that reason, you know, it's a worthwhile goal to, you know, expand our sidewalk network, and I will support this report.
All right. Alderman Cahill.
As a resident 15 years ago, I was part of that block that got the last SSA approved. So, and it was a battle. Maybe some of the aldermen that on this diocese was actually sitting here as I was a citizen arguing for our case. I do support this. I think we need more funding for sidewalks. I've been a big advocate for sidewalks. Although this policy is not 100% perfect, it is moving in the right direction. And yes, it is a drop in the bucket, but it is in the right direction again. So therefore, again, I will be supporting it.
All right. I think I don't see any other hands up. I will ask Clerk Tamer to please call the roll.
Bastido?
Yes.
Nardini?
Yes.
Brennan?
No.
Irby?
Yes.
Deuter?
Aye.
Verimas?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Schenko?
Yes.
Jensen?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Cahill?
Aye.
Toludo?
No.
Park?
Aye.
Udera?
Aye.
12 ayes, 2 nays.
12 ayes, 2 nays. Report 712.12 is adopted. Moving on to 7.15, Clerk Tamer, please read the report.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the ROW vacation adjacent to 176 North Myrtle Avenue in the total amount of 375 square feet be approved at a sales price of $2,928, that the city attorney be authorized to prepare the necessary documents for city council approval. Signed, Alderman Emily Bastido, Chair, Alderman Brian P. Cahill, Vice Chair, Alderman Michael Braham, and Alderman Karen Schenko.
All right, may I have a motion to put report 7.15 before the council? Alderman Bastido with a motion, Alderman Cahill with a second, Alderman Bastido.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this report involves the residents at 176 North Myrtle and their desire to purchase part of a land that is adjacent to their property. So that would require the city vacating land that is currently owned by the city. So it came to our committee, and according to a policy that's been in place for quite a while, the committee met to discuss this. So we met over 4 different open meetings, which had posted this every time as something that's going to be discussed by our committee. For the first meeting, we did not actually discuss price. First, we decided if this was something that the city was interested in vacating, and if we should do this, because this is the first piece of property in this alley that would be vacated. So it is going to have an impact on this neighborhood, and it is going to change kind of the use and the makeup of this alley. So that was the first discussion, and then in the meetings that followed, we discussed price. So the policy states that as a starting point for the discussion, the committee should start with 50% of EAV and move from there. And so we did that. And as you know, 50% of EAV would actually be 1/6 of the fair market value. So we started there, and some people thought it should be higher. I don't think anyone thought it should be lower. But, you know, we considered a lot of different factors.
and did feel a responsibility to the taxpayers and to the city as city asset that we should try to find something that was both fair to the residents, but also, respectful of the fact that these are city assets that we are selling. So there is value to this property. It means something. It is valuable. Obviously, you heard from the homeowners what it means to them. It could have value to the other people who are adjacent to that property, and it could have value to the city. So all land in Elmhurst we felt was worth something. Some people thought 100% of EAV, which would still be 1/3 of the fair market value, was more accurate, but we did not end up there. So we put a lot of consideration into this as the process dictates, and now we are coming to the full council with a recommendation of 75% of EAV, and I ask for your support.
All right. Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. Requests for vacation of city-owned right-of-way don't come up often. When the requests come forward, the easy part, as we just heard from Alderman Bastido, is deciding whether to vacate. Typically, the request is for a sliver of land that's unused and largely unusable by the city. It serves little or no public purpose, has extremely limited productive use, and generates zero tax revenue. In many cases, the land is encumbered with a utility easement and cannot be covered with a structure. The much harder part of these discussions is related to the price the city should charge for the parcel. In my time on the Public Works Committee, I served with members who felt strongly that the city is best served by having as much unused right-of-way privately owned, being used productively, and generating tax revenue. Those members believed that the price should be set to incentivize a transfer to private ownership, meaning no or low cost. On the other hand, the role we have as stewards of the city's resources, a responsibility we all take seriously, could justify a higher cost. The pricing decision, like many others the council makes, does not have a right or wrong answer. To guide these discussions and presumably to help reconcile the different approaches, create a degree of certainty for prospective buyers, and ensure that buyers are treated fairly and consistently, the city approved the right-of-way vacation policy in 2009. According to the policy, we just heard this, the starting point of the discussion regarding the value of the proposed vacated piece of property is 50% of the EAV. The policy states that the amount charged may be influenced by factors and specifically mentions including whether a buildable lot is created, which could justify a price above 50% EAV, or if the sale reduces a liability for the city, which could justify a price below 50% EAV. In addition to the guidance provided by the policy, we have information about the way previous vacation requests have been handled. Of 14 requests identified over the past 13 years, one was for a 50 by 150 lot, which was sold for $184,000, presumably market rate at the time, which was 2014. Out of the other 13 requests, the council approved 4 vacation requests at no cost, 6 at 20% EAV, and 3 at 50% EAV. Other than the buildable lot, the cost of the vacated land did not exceed 50% EAV. 2 of these requests allowed a subdivision to create an additional buildable lot. However, even in these cases, the price did not exceed 50% EAV. When we are asked to vacate city right-of-way, I believe we should follow the policy and be consistent with our pricing. As important as our role as stewards of the city's resources, we also have an obligation to treat our residents fairly and consistently. I don't believe we should set a price based on a residents' circumstances, either their degree of need or their ability to pay more, but rather with the broader public purpose in mind as guided by the policy and the desire to treat residents consistently. For the reasons I described, I'd like to make a motion to amend the report to change the recommended sales price from 75% EAV, $2,928, to 50% EAV, $1,952.
All right, and a copy of the proposed change should be on the dais before each of you, but I would need a second to consider to bring the amendment before the council.
Mayor, second.
Second by Alderman Brennan. All right, Did you want to speak on the amendment specifically, or your remarks cover that? All right. We are now debating the amendment to change the price from 75% EAV to 50% EAV. Discussion on the amendment.
No, you go.
I don't know. One of you should go. How about you, Alderman Park?
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the Public Works Committee time and effort to analyze this situation. As always, we split up into smaller teams so that we can go through everything diligently. But I think as a whole, all of us all together come up with the best decision, as the larger group. And so for that reason, I will be in support of this amendment because, as was stated, I appreciate that in the first meeting, the big question is does this sliver of land serve the community? I disagree with it being called an asset because I think for an asset, it has to, have value to the public that it belongs to. And with us saying, no, we are going to sell it, then we are saying it does not serve the public. And then we will, by doing so, and working on setting a price, we're facilitating a transfer so that little sliver of land can then become useful by joining a residence and then generating property taxes. So not only is there the fraction of the money in the sale, but then the property taxes that will be forever on collected from it that will serve the broader community. And I would like to reiterate that the policy of the starting at 50% for the discussion, gives all committees or, anybody discussing room to consider the nuances of the situation, because if we just had algorithms, we wouldn't need us. But as we analyze and we look at reasons to adjust up or down, I do not see a reason to adjust up on this. Because this little piece only has value to the residents that are adjacent to it. And yes, it may be the first in this alley, but unless we're going to try to go back and change our policy to always set at 75%, we wouldn't be planning to charge the rest of any residents who would take a sliver 75% of the EAV as well. So, for those reasons, I think I'll wrap it up in case anybody else wants to talk, but I will be in support of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I agree that, we all sit on committees, and I know a lot of work went into this, so I appreciate that, from the Public Works Committee. I was chair and saw, some of this while I was chair. And I'm glad Alderman Deuter shared some statistics. I was like, I don't recall, a vacation ever being greater than 50%, and I knew there were some zero and some in between. So this is sort of an outlier for me, and I just simply have a difference of opinion than where the committee landed on this. And there are probably a couple of drivers for that. These parcels, that we're talking about tonight, I think there are numerous in town, and almost all of them will come with some level of easement, right? So there is some limitation, to these properties. In this particular example, this 325 square feet is the difference between putting a roof on a pergola or not. And, for these residents, whether it was an existing structure or a new structure being built, it still enhances the property and brings value to them. And I think that's awesome, because what's going to happen is there are going to be, taxes associated with that value. So in my opinion, I think we should be incenting residents to take ownership of these parcels. And if this is the first of an alleyway, I want to set a precedent that, hey, others, I think it's a nominal price to take ownership of this parcel. And at the end of the day, This will generate tax revenue because they will come on the tax roll. As it exists today, there's zero revenue coming from this parcel. In the future, there'll be, tax dollars associated with it. So all in all, for the, I think I'm not for giving away these parcels, but I'm for consistency and fairness. And given the fact that the data shows, anywhere from 0 to 50, I support this amendment strongly. I just want to make sure I covered everything here. Yeah, so I think that's I've covered all my points, Mayor. I appreciate it. This amendment does have my support. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Brennan, Alderman Hill, and then Alderman Varamis.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all the work that was done on this this report by the committee. I am not in favor of the amendment. Let me just say first, I don't have a covered patio, so I totally understand the value and utility of a covered patio. I wish I had a covered patio. That being said, one thing I hear a lot on council is respecting the process of letting committee engage with the topic and do the work on that. And as I understand it, this issue was engaged by the committee 4 times. So this was not a brief or one-time conversation. To me, 4 times means I would hope that the issue was considered at length, and where we landed on that EAV was quite deliberate. When I hear also concerns about wanting residents to purchase these properties, let's imagine a 100% EAV. That's still 1/3 of the 3-year average market value. If that doesn't incentivize, to me that sounds incentivized in the first place, even at 100% EAV. So we're not talking about that, we're talking about 75%. So to me, it seems like a significant discount on what full market value is. And then I guess my final comment, if 50%, if we talk about precedents, right, and precedents guiding our decisions going forward, if 50% is always going to be what we arrive at, or it sounds like that's sort of the guidance we're supposed to use, I'm a little confused at why this is discussed by committee in some respects, right? I mean, this could just be something where we default to a 50% EAV or perhaps less. And it seems a little disingenuous to ask a committee to stick to that and not consider it and go up or down. And I understand the value of precedent, but I feel like if it goes up, it goes up. If it goes down, it goes down. But 50%, as it says in the policy, is a starting point. And so that's great that it's a starting point. It seems like a median is reasonable to me. But I don't understand why we have to be limited in our discussions by that. And again, all this being considered, it's still a great bargain for residents to acquire these properties, even at 100% EAV, which of course I'm not recommending nor proposing here. So I will not be supporting this amendment.
Alderman Nardini. Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Varamis, then Alderman Nardini. I beg your pardon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I strongly support the amendment. I don't have anything different to add than my fellow colleagues up here who also support it. The current policy, the history of vacating properties that we've had, and I don't see the justification from 50 to 75%. I think this is a great amendment, and I strongly support it. Thank you.
Alderman Nardini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't support the amendment. I think the committee followed the policy. Nothing that I've heard today outweighs the fact that they did their work and they followed the procedure, the policy. And lastly, it's a curious amendment. If the sum total of this discussion is a percentage, to amend that percentage is more like making a minority report, not an amendment. It's not amending, it's changing. I'm not in support.
Right, just to be clear, the minority report can only be brought by someone on the committee, so the amendment is properly in order.
I follow that it would only be coming from somebody in the committee. It's a curious thing to amend when it seems what it's doing is, I defer to your knowledge of Robert's rules. It seems a curious thing to just change a number by amendment.
All right. Additional discussion. Alderman Bram.
Thank you. As some have already stated, this has been discussed thoroughly and in years past, and I was around, and I think I may be one, if not one of two, that was around when the policy was created. Anybody that I spoke to before this evening about this issue or this agenda item, I have stated then, and I stated in committee, and I'll state now, that this policy, albeit not perfect, is a policy that wasn't around prior to 2009. It is something, and the policy actually states this, it is something that is to be provided as a guideline. And for anyone to hint that this committee did not use this policy as a guideline, I would say is very inaccurate at the gentler of terms. We followed the policy. The policy states, as others have said tonight, start at 50%. Some have asked, well, why would you go above 50% now versus other times? The letter from the petitioners themselves states that fact, because this increases the buildable coverage area of their property. That is a factor. Does it have an easement? I agree, there's an easement. As Alderman Bastido already stated, there was some compromise. There was discussion about what the percentage to be during the committee meetings, and we landed at 75%. To state whatever was done historically is what we should do today and what is set as a precedent. Doesn't make any sense. Then why are we sitting here as a council? Because there's different people on this council elected today versus last year, or not last year, versus a couple of years ago, and so on, up every single time there's an election. We bring different views to the policy, we bring different rationale, and that's why we're elected by our residents to determine how we should be good stewards of their assets. And I do believe property, no matter who owns it, is an asset. So history doesn't set precedent, at least in not my eyes, and history does not determine on what we should be doing here tonight. And I will actually challenge that the data that is presented is all the data of right-of-way discussions that we've had before. I've been on the council a long time, and I'm sure that I could find one that has been, or many that have been, over 50%. I would ask this. I think the number at 50% is $5 and change per square foot. Would you sell your property to your neighbor for $5 a square foot? As Alderman Bastido and others have said already, that EAV is 1/3 of the 3-year average of a market value. What the policy says, 1/6, start at 1/6. That's a great deal. Alderman Hill already said, even at that, even at 100%, it's a bargain. We are selling an asset that allows this petitioner to, I assume, my assumption, to build their dream home. It is an asset, it's a limited asset to probably only 2 property owners, right? The petitioner and the neighbors adjacent to them. But it is still an asset. I would propose that we should be good stewards. We're talking, for those who don't know, we're talking roughly about an increase of $900. We're not talking tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking from, and the report states it, but I don't have the report up. We're talking from 1952 to 2928. We're not talking anything significant. I believe that we should charge what is appropriate, and I believe 75% is appropriate of the EAV.
Alderman Toledo.
I support the amendment and the motion to amend for many of the reasons that Alderman Brennan and Alderman Doherty and others have said. I will reiterate, when we're talking about the piece of property that is being requested to be vacated, not only is it really have no value to the city of Elmhurst in that it produces no revenue, such that I actually support in these situations 0%, just give it. But I am happy with the 50%. But also, the people, in this case the petitioners, and anyone else who petitions for a vacation, they are signing up for paying property taxes to the city of Elmhurst forever and more. And that benefits all of us. So if we're saying that we're being responsible of the taxpayers' property, the taxpayers are getting a value from vacation in the form of future property taxes. And it does come across as nickel and diming our residents who are trying to improve property to one of the proponents of the report who says themselves that it is not that much money, but yet we're going to nickel and dime our residents for not that much money. It comes across as inappropriate. Thank you.
All right, additional discussion. Anyone who hasn't spoken yet first? Alderman Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor. When examining this issue, I approach it not from a place of whether a given dollar value is appropriate, but whether from a place where the decisions make sense to me in the context of our policy. I think that interactions with the government should be as predictable as possible. The policy passed in 2009 does well in giving standard valuation as a starting point, which is good. It also allows the committee to deviate from that value based on factors unique to a property. Unfortunately, it only lists 2 possible factors from deviating from the starting point, one higher, one lower. While we cannot list every possible factor in the policy, having a few more guidelines could improve the predictability of the outcome in each case. I want to thank the committee for expanding on the reasons that they used to reach this result. Without those detailed reasons, the decision could appear arbitrary. It would be hard to support a deviation from the policy starting point. However, given the factors they stated here tonight, I trust that the decision was made by committee is reasonable and worth my support. One other point on the policy is it seems as though, a lot of the cases that were, mentioned tonight were less than 50% or 50% of EAV. There's a couple of 50%, some at 0. If the starting point is 50% of EAV, wouldn't you expect that half of the cases would be above and half below, statistically speaking? Just a rhetorical question, but if that's not the case, then perhaps the policy should be changed and the starting point should be lowered to 25% or something.
Okay, additional discussion. All right. Clerk Tamer, call the roll.
We're on the amendment, right?
I'm sorry, thank you. We're voting on the amendment to change the percentage from 75% to 50%.
Bastido?
No.
Nardini?
No.
Brennan?
Aye.
Irby?
No.
Deuter?
Aye.
Farimas?
Aye.
Hill?
No.
Schenko?
No.
Jensen?
No.
Graham?
No.
Cahill?
No.
Toludo?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Nudera?
Aye.
6 ayes, 8 nays.
6 ayes, 8 nays. The motion fails. On to the report. Discussion on the report. We have the right.
Actually, Mayor. So, do I have the floor?
Is there any confusion on the vote? Are we?
We're good.
All right. Alderman Brennan.
Okay. All right, thank you. So, although I oppose the 75%, given the fact I do want the resident to have an option to purchase this parcel, I will support the report, even though I'm not aligned with the percentage. Thank you.
Further discussion. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel the same way. I honestly, I do respect the committee process. I did not hear justification that would, in my opinion, justify going higher. I think there's so much value in getting these non-productive properties into private ownership. So I'm disappointed with the conclusion of the amendment. But I too, like Alderman Brennan, don't want to stand in the way of these homeowners being able to move forward on their plans. So I'll support where this report ends up.
Alderman Park.
Similar to Alderman Brennan and Alderman Deuter, I do want to facilitate this transfer to our residents. I'm disappointed at where the amendment voting landed, because I also feel that I did not see nor hear justification on increasing the sale price from 50% to 75%. But I will be in support of this because I would like to facilitate the transfer to make this land useful to the residents and the greater community.
Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment. I mean, seeing the discussion on a policy with a fixed percentage that may be perceived as a final percentage, I've been thinking about that, and to echo some of Alderman Jensen's comments, I think this is a policy that hopefully will be redefined in the future so that it perhaps provides a range or some more stochastic sort of result that takes in different, amounts that you may see within a range, some a little higher, some a little lower, but I hope it's something we can look at and revise, because I think hearing the discussion, there does seem to be a lot of confusion about what a guiding policy could ultimately lead to. Thank you.
Alderman Brennan.
So one other thing that comes to mind, voting at 75% tonight basically sets the price for the rest of the alley. I don't see how we could deviate from that, quite frankly, but I agree with Alderman Hill. I think we need to revisit the policy, and so I look forward to seeing some of that work at committee level at some point. Thank you.
Alderman Bram.
Just to prevent any further comments about the policy, we did discuss in committee after this issue was resolved to revisit the policy already. So that's already within the horizon. So we do have concerns. This is better than it was, but obviously it needs to be better than it is.
Clerk Tamer. Call the roll, please.
Bastido?
Aye.
Nardini?
Aye.
Brennan?
Aye.
Irby?
Aye.
Deuter?
Aye.
Verimas? Aye. Hill?
Aye.
Schenko?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Bram?
Aye.
Cahill?
Aye.
Toledo?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Nudera?
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
Before announcing the vote, I am going to use the chair's prerogative. I don't get to vote, but I'm going to tell you that I have thought a great deal about this particular issue, and I heard a lot of aldermen voting a particular way because they're respecting the committee process, which I too respect. But as we go forward, and I am concerned that we have just set a precedent that's outside of precedent. We've had a policy that was signed in 2019 that said we start at 50%. It requires that the committee articulate a reason to go up or down. The 50% has always worked. We've never gone up. And so for the first time on a property that's different than no other property, we're going to 75%. We've had properties where a lot not only could build a porch over a pergola, but it could divide the lot. So the owner of this new piece of property, they got this little sliver, now had 2 buildable lots. I want to correct, in my opinion, I want to say in my opinion, that all land does not have value. You can say that. I will tell you, I watch my law practice in the city, people come in and there are properties that are auctioned off whole lots and no one bids on them. 50 by 125. Why? They have no value. We just saw a request for the legislature to change the ability of people who buy these lots at bid, at tax sales, who want to turn them back in and get a refund because they have no value. So we have gone with this policy since 2009. It's always worked. We've always come up with about 50%, sometimes 25% to get these properties back on the tax roll. So we talk in committee, and sometimes the committee doesn't get it right. And in this case, I don't think they got it right. I was there. No one articulated a reason to go beyond the standard. And in fact, one of the committee members said that they thought it should be 100% because that was their opinion, hence the compromise. But that's not how we set policy. People in our town have a right to know that when they come forward, that they have an expectation that the precedent, although not legally binding, sets an expectation. And now we have set a new expectation, and we're going to go back and visit and perhaps make a clearer policy that maybe it should be 50%. And this homeowner will have paid 75. It'd be pretty hard, I guess, if we change the policy so that the other people on the alley might get it for less. Why do we bring it before the committee? There are a number of things we bring before the council. There are a number of things that come before the council that seem quite routine. We're giving away junk from the historical foundation, but it's got to be looked at and approved, even though it's property that has no value. In fact, I don't know if we could pay to have anyone hauled away, but it's property we're abandoning. So it doesn't change the outcome, and I will also add, it wasn't brought up, property has liabilities too. If we don't maintain it and someone gets injured, we didn't maintain it and we're liable. Hence, my thoughts, 14 ayes, 0 nays, the report is adopted. On to the next item. (7.17). Clerk Tamer, read the report.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the City Council approve the purchase of 3 Ford Explorer PBVs to replace PD-14, PD-16, and PD-43 not to exceed the proposed budget amount, and that the city attorney prepare the appropriate resolution authorizing the purchase. Signed, Alderman Emily Bastido, Chair, Alderman Brian P. Cahill, Vice Chair, Alderman Michael Bram, and Alderman Karen Schenko.
All right, may I have a motion to put 7.17 before the council? Alderman Bastido with the motion, Alderman Cahill with the second. Alderman Bastido?
I'll give the floor to Alderman Irby, who pulled this.
Alderman Irby.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alderman Bastido. A lot of thought went into this process for both this one, the 2024 Ford Explorer Police Pursuit Vehicle, and the 2025. The process of thinking about this is not a reflection of the need of the police department and not giving them the vehicles they need. This has to do with a process. Just to put a quick 30 seconds or less here, the items being purchased tonight on both of these policies, or 7.17 and 7.18, are being purchased into future budgets that are not approved, with an exception of PD-43. That is in the 2023 budget. We have 5 cars left, approximately, that have not been bought, that have been approved in the capital, in the KEB. So the main problem I have here is it's going to take 30 weeks, maybe 10 weeks, could be 35 weeks with the new United Auto Workers strike. That pains me for Chief McLean, that he doesn't get his cars sooner. And as I've been talking to people today, there are methods to get them sooner for him, but that's not the discussion here publicly. So I'm going to not approve or be against these, not because of the police need, but because we shouldn't be buying items that are not approved in a current year budget. So those comments will be applicable to both 7.17 and 7.18. So I will not be approving those. Thank you.
Just for a point of clarification, City Manager, we're ordering these vehicles, but I don't know how we would be contracting for them if they're not in our budget. Can you clarify that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So what we're asking the council to approve tonight is basically for us to get in line to order these vehicles. We're not paying for them right now. They would be purchased with that year's budget, 2024 and 2025. We've had some difficulty in the past, as I think the council remembers, in getting vehicles. And in fact, in 2022, our order was completely canceled, and we are trying to catch up to that right now. So I respect Alderman Irby's comments about the vehicles. However, we believe on the staff side, and we think we've imparted to the council, that this is a matter of public safety so that our police officers do have the proper equipment and vehicles to keep our town safe.
And I would also add that if for some reason we order the vehicles and the budget year comes and the council has decided not to purchase the vehicles, we simply, I'm pretty confident saying we would step out of line, much like happened with the fire engine that we got when another municipality stepped out of line, because you are correct, we cannot, I've never seen it done that we buy something where it's not budgeted, but okay. Additional discussion on the report? Alderman Brennan.
So I just want to comment that I appreciate Public Works, continuing their focus on hybrid. And even though that's our desire, there's no guarantee. I mean, supply chain's still a mess. And so, and it's better to try to get out of it, out ahead of it with our desired purchase of hybrids, knowing that it's possible we need to default to, carburetor vehicles. You look at, in the report that we're looking at, these, even though they aren't, two of them aren't super old, the 2019, 2020 year vehicles, they have a lot of miles on them and, a lot of maintenance costs, and that's only going to go up. So this definitely has my support, and really do appreciate staff and the committee focus on hybrid. Thank you.
Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to echo Alderman Brennan's comments and thank Public Works. I know I've had several conversations with them about alternative fuel options, and I feel that they have done their best to move that along and keep that in mind when making recommendations to the committee. And it's direct injection, not carbureted, Alderman Brennan.
Thank you.
No problem. Car enthusiasts couldn't let that go by, but that's all. I do support the current report. Thank you.
What a geek.
Additional discussion on this report? All right. Clerk Tamer?
Bastido?
Aye.
Nardini?
Aye.
Brennan?
Aye.
Irby?
No.
Deuter?
Aye.
Arimas?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Schenko?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Cahill?
Aye.
Toledo?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Nudera?
Aye.
13 ayes, 1 nay.
13 ayes, 1 nay. 7.17 is adopted. 7.18, Clerk Tamer, please read the report.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the City Council approve the purchase of 3 2025 Ford Explorer PPVs to replace PD3, PD5, and PD11, not to exceed the proposed budget amount, and that the city attorney prepare the appropriate resolution authorizing the purchase. Signed, Alderman Emily Bastido, Chair, Alderman Brian P. Cahill, Vice Chair, and Alderman Michael Bram, and Alderman Karen Schenko.
We have a motion to approve item 7.18. Alderman Bastido, second, Alderman Cahill. Alderman Bastido?
I yield to Alderman Irby.
Alderman Irby?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alderman Bastido. I made those comments in the first, and I want to appreciate and give great thanks to the care that you guys did give under these tough circumstances. City Manager, I appreciate your comments. My goal is to get our police department the cars faster than what we can get them, because they need them. And I think everybody appreciates that. And I'm sure there's ways we can do this, but at this point, I think that might be a lost cause. And so, again, I appreciate the committees, their work, and I trust that. But I still have a problem buying things out of a budget. The budget's not approved in 2025 either. So, again, I will not be supporting, but not for the benefit, or not because of the need that the police have for the cars. Thank you.
All right, additional discussion? Alderman Bastido.
Yes, I just wanted to emphasize, so this report is for 2025 models, and that window opens in November of this year. So again, we, just like City Manager said, we're just getting in line and placing an order. And if for some reason it's not approved in the budget, we will simply step out of line. But, you know, historically in 2020, we got no vehicles. In 2021, I think we got half of what we ordered. 2022, again, the whole order was canceled. So we are still trying to catch up, and this is just holding our place in line. We want to be at the front of the line.
Alderman Irby.
Yeah, just to respond, we have 5 cars left in the 2023 budget. So if we were able to buy those cars that are either on the 2024 or the 2025 report, I don't see why those could not be allocated in that approved budget for these items that we're talking about. Why we need to jump ahead 2 years or 1 year when we're leaving 5 behind, or maybe we'll catch them later, I don't know, but that's the crux that I miss, is why would we not exercise the 5 cars we have left in the budget to respond to that question. Thank you.
Alderman Bastido.
So my understanding is that we've gotten 7 vehicles so far this year, and we do hope to get more, but that doesn't affect our desire to get in line for next year and the year after, because if we don't get in line now, then we will have lost our, the opportunity to get in line. So we really are just getting in line in case we need these vehicles in the next 2 years. But no, I agree with you. If we fill our needs this year, then it might change, how many vehicles we are trying to get in the coming years.
All right, Alderman Toledo.
Just because, it's late, so why not just keep talking?
Did you want an answer to that? Oh.
That was a rhetorical question. I do, I guess, ask the question. I understand City Manager's explanation. I understand Chair Bastido's explanation. If we're not spending money, if we are simply ordering, why does it even have to come to City Council? Does anyone have an answer to that question? That one wasn't rhetorical. Thank you.
I have to suspect that, even though we don't pay money, I got to believe that there's a purchase order, right? That is a formal legal or financial commitment to buy it. As said earlier, demand is so high. If you go to a dealer and say, hey, you know what, we're out, they'll let you out just because they can probably get more money for that same vehicle. But I think because there's an official purchase order that's completed, that's why it's here.
I was going to say precedent. We've always done it that way, but and I want to clarify something else. So, and City Manager may be able to answer this. If we were planning on buying cars in 2022 and we didn't get them, and we're talking about buying cars that we want in 2025, we want the 2022 cars. In other words, is the cars need replacement? If we didn't get them, we still need to replace those that were scheduled in 2022 and those in 23 and those in 24. There's sort of a rolling process where our cars are gradually retired. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we're not buying more cars than we need, but if we fall behind, we have to get the ones that would fill the ones that didn't show up, and then those that are scheduled for that current year. Okay, additional discussion. Clerk Tamer, Alderman Irby.
Thank you, Mayor. Your point is taken quite well, and when I mentioned the 5 cars left in 2023, those are older cars. So the ones that we picked off on the list are cars that are newer and have lower miles. So that's my point. Why not get the older cars that you just said with one of the reports and pick them up and clean them off the slate and schedule them out? Does that make sense?
Can you respond to that?
I can't respond to the complete fleet schedule, but I know that between our police department and our public works department and our purchasing, we do have it all planned out. Again, with respect to Alderman Irby, I believe that our fleet supervisor, our assistant public works director, and our chief of police have an idea and schedule for all those replacements.
Yeah, I mean, there is a schedule. It's not just, the chief isn't just saying, I think we ought to get some new cars. There's some spiffy ones out there. It's a matter of, we have a certain number of years, a certain number of miles, and they move out. And if they don't show up, we still need to replace those. And meanwhile, another batch might be coming on for the replacement.
If I may, as I think about it, some of those vehicles that Alderman Irby is referring to may be detective vehicles, which obviously are different from patrol vehicles.
Okay. All right. Alderman Irby.
Just to respond to that, historically, we have swapped vehicles. Like PD 29 in the past never was a K9 unit. It might have been a detective unit. So when a new vehicle does arrive, Chief McLean and the city manager can decide that the new K9 unit is not going to be PD 29, it's going to be PD 30. So those line items do have a vehicle on them with a mileage and a date of that make and model and have a repair cost, et cetera. So you can, and historically we've done that, is swap them out. So again, these are older cars that were already scheduled and in the budget, the capital budget.
Okay.
So it just perplexes me, and that's why I voted no.
All right, well, I think if you sit down with the city manager, he can probably put a little bit more detail on that for you. Okay. Additional discussion? Clerk Tamer.
Bastido.
Aye.
Nardini.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Irby.
No.
Deuter.
Aye.
Barimas.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Schenko.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Cahill.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Nudera.
Aye.
13 ayes, 1 nay.
13 ayes, 1 nay. Report 7.18 is passed. Thank you all for all of the items we've gone through so far. Very good thoughts and debate. Reports of appointed elected officials, Mayor Levin. We have our zoning ordinance open house update this week in council chambers, Wednesday, September 20th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. with a PowerPoint presentation at 9:30 a.m. and then at 12:30 a.m. And then again on Thursday, p.m. Sorry, that's we might be getting to it. And then the next day, Thursday, September 21st, from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. with PowerPoint presentations at 3:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. I also wanted to thank the Heritage Foundation, the museum staff, and all of the volunteers, many of whom are on this dais, for another very successful craft beer fest. The team is still working on final numbers, but all of the pre-event indications were that we had set another record for attendance, and we also want to thank all the sponsors who made this such a successful and beneficial event to the city. I was there, and I can tell you it was a good event. I saw certain people around there, so be there early for next year. That is all I have. City Manager.
Thank you. Two quick things before we get started on the KEB, which I promise will be a short presentation. We recently submitted our reimbursement for that water main break, which happened in July, early July, to NPL. That was for an amount of $93,505.98. That included employee costs, equipment, contractors, and lost water. We estimated lost water at about $40,000. So we will expect NPL, as they have promised all along, to reimburse us for that. Second thing, I would like to thank the City Center and all of our city departments for a very successful Rock the Block. That was a few weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago. And then final one, even though I'm not a member of Kiwanis Club, they do have Peanut and Pretzel Weekend coming up, so please support them as they're on the street. That's this weekend, the 22nd and 23rd. Don't worry, Lions Candy Day is coming, and I will let you know.
All right, we will.
Mike, can I have that remote for the slides?
Any other reports by elected officials? All right, we'll move on to the capital expenditure budget. City Manager, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the beginning of the budget process as far as public goes, public facing. The city staff, finance department, particularly Public Works, have been working on the capital expenditure budget. Just to refresh everybody's memory, that the capital expenditure budget is 5 years in length and is to identify and create a comprehensive plan for long-range major capital expenditures which are necessary to maintain and develop the assets of the city. Those assets must be $25,000 or more and held for a period of 10 years or more. We classify those expenditures into one of 6 categories as far as essential to maintain our level of service, down to they contribute to the economic development, and then we also prioritize them by essential and immediate need down to optional but beneficial in social, cultural, or aesthetic ways. And by the way, we will put this presentation on board docs first thing tomorrow so that you can review it again if you choose to. As you can see, the capital budget varies from year to year, and sometimes the priorities change. A lot of times the dollar amounts from year to year change as we pick up projects, we move projects, we try to prioritize. Perhaps grants come along that make us prioritize them to a different year. And so I'm not going to go column by column here, but you can see what those expenditures are. And of course, all this information is in the binder that was put before you. Those new to the process, this will be your budget binder as well as we start going through the operating budgets. You don't have to open it now. But as we go through the operating budgets, we will give you the 3-hole punch sections to include in that budget as well. So here you can see a pie chart broken up by the expenditures. The two largest areas, I should say, are the general fund and the municipal utility fund. The general fund further broken down by departments. Just so you know, the Historical Museum was not a typo. There is 0, and so just it shows that as a line. Somebody might think that was a mistake, but it wasn't. And then on the next slide, of course, you have the revenue sources by fund. Significant in this by size, of course, is our bonding and our IEPA loans, which we use a lot of those on the wastewater treatment plant and other large projects, such as buildings. The next year's 5-year KEB areas would include street and sidewalk programs, the municipal utilities, as we spoke of, stormwater, buildings, major equipment, and other smaller areas. We break down the street and sidewalk annual programs in this chart, and I want to note that we did not include the sidewalk discussion that was held tonight. There were 2 pending items on the city council agenda. We didn't want to presume anything, and so we will add those to the operating budget for 2024. That would be under the sidewalk cost share and the new sidewalk categories. Other programs that go through the KEB include the motor fuel tax street program, For construction in 2024, we have the Park Avenue Bridge Deck replacement. That is funded by Build America bonds that were given to the city. If you recall, a couple years ago, we did First Street. Now it's time to do Park Avenue. And if we need to do this so that we can maintain the infrastructure underneath, because with a bridge, you can imagine the more time you wait when repairs are necessary, the more expensive it gets to repair in the future. And then as far as future road projects, we have the intersection of Butterfield and York, the Villa Avenue street resurfacing that we're partnering with the Village of Villa Park on, Northwest Elmhurst roadway reconstruction, Alma Avenue reconstruction, and Cayuga Avenue reconstruction. Other projects include the Route 83 pedestrian bridge. We're targeting that for 2025. We have grant dollars committed to that. We are in the process of applying for additional grant dollars. And then, something that was mentioned earlier this evening, the bike and ped plan improvements that we'll be going through as well. On the municipal utility fund, this is both water and sewer, sanitary sewer. As far as water goes, that is replacement of water mains. Our master plan recommends 2.1 miles per year. Currently, we're doing 1.8 miles per year. We're trying to catch up to that 2.1. We also have some pumping stations and reservoirs to maintain. And on the sanitary sewer program, excuse me, we have annual sewer replacement program and also our lift stations that need to be looked at and maintained. And we are currently undergoing a water and sewer rate study for those improvements. The treatment plant, which we've talked about for a number of years, we have Bundle 5, which is a clarifier project, and then Bundle 6, which is phosphorus. These projects continue to escalate in cost due to inflation. They are both required, more so the phosphorus, required by IEPA to come into mandate, they're mandated by 2030 for phosphorus. We are currently talking with our consulting engineer about that and consulting with the IEPA as well. Next slide I'm going to skip over. It is wastewater treatment plant improvements, but it's too small to see. One other category is stormwater projects. Again, that was talked about tonight as well. And this table does not show them in priority as we have them by the Public Works Committee. It is merely how we're looking at funding, especially with potential grant funding that's out there. I'll bring to light, or I will point out the Spring Eggleston project, which is the priority project, but we are in the process of working with the I think it's federal EPA to move some grant dollars that were given to us or earmarked by Congressman Quigley for a project at York High School, which is already done. EPA said, sorry, you can't use it for that. So we're in the process of moving those dollars over to the Spring and Eggleston project. Next project is, and I believe all the rest are city facilities. The police station we've been talking about since 2018 as far as space study goes. We talked about that additionally as we've discussed city assets and what to do. And so if you recall, we engaged an architect to look at the police station. That architect has updated the numbers for us and also looked at the possibility of combining both buildings on one site. And so the current estimate is $44 million for a new police station on the current site and 80 to 100 depending on how big and how tall we go for a combined police station city hall.
Just to clarify for everyone, these aren't both decisions we've made, and we've been talking for a long time about the second one, and those numbers are new, so there'll be a lot of discussion about whether it's a new police station or whether it's a new combined one, but it's just we want to get the numbers out there. It's not reflecting any policy decisions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Works Garage is an asset that we need to maintain. And as you can see, we have some auto lift replacements, fuel island replacement, And then we talked about a Phase 3, which would include relocation of the cul-de-sac with a property expansion, open yard to store materials, and non-heated storage, along with stormwater detention that would be required. Other facilities include City Hall, depending on what the decisions are, but there's some elevator work that needs to be done. And then the fire training tower needs some work as well. There are two components to the fire training tower. You have the actual tower, then you have some classroom space. Chief Dufert and I have been talking about how to replace that tower, the training tower, which is the area that needs the work because of all the burns and the environment that happens in that facility. And we think we found some alternative, cheaper methods that result in a $655,000 number, and that would be using containers, shipping containers, which have been repurposed. But of course, that would come before committee before we do anything. Next category would be tax increment financing, and that covers 3 different areas of the community. Downtown, which would include signal improvements at York and Arthur, the metro station, streetscaping and utility relocation, the North York TIF, which has some sidewalk, roadway improvements, and the Church and Lake Street TIF, which is an industrial concrete street resurfacing. As you see, the KEB includes $51 million for that, and with the largest project, of course, being the train station. Finally, the debt, which is proposed to be incurred as we move through the capital expenditure budget. You can see the different limits that we have now. The city's projected GO bonds outstanding January 1 of next year is $72.5 million. KEB includes another $102 million in projects. However, that needs to be discussed, massaged, and moved around. And then, of course, we need to discuss funding for repayment of any of these bonds as we move forward. So as far as the next steps go, the capital is rolled into the 2-year operating budget, and committee review of appropriate city department budgets, as we've done in the past, where Public Works Committee would discuss a majority of these, perhaps public safety on the building aspect. The Finance Committee is asked to review the revenues for the operating budget, and the city budget team are reviewing department budgets right now as far as the operating goes. We'll compile that, expenditures and revenues, bring it to City Council in late October, early November for our Committee of the Whole discussions. With that, Mayor, I'm happy to answer questions or save them for the committee.
All right, but you wanted to start at KEB page 55 tonight?
However you'd like to do it, Mayor.
All right, that is the overview. I will encourage everyone, for those who are on the Finance Committee or those who've been around, I think there's a tendency to skip over the capital budget, and we spend a lot of time on the operating budget, and then sometimes people wonder why something isn't pouring over from the capital budget into the operating budget. So keep your eye on the capital budget. Take a look at it, read the materials, and then we will be making decisions that will then directly affect our operating budget. Any other questions at this point on this item? All right. Item 9, other business. Is there any other business to be brought before the council this evening? You don't want to get hurt. Seeing none, item 10, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn? Alderman Brennan with a motion, second by Alderman Deuter. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all for your hard work tonight. We are adjourned.